Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Today I'm joined with Dr. James Perdue, who is a best-selling author and host of the Professor of Perseverance podcast, which yours truly was a guest on a little while ago. And James and I really connected during that show. We both have baseball backgrounds, and I love being on his show. And as soon as we were done, I said, you know what, man, you need to be on my show as well. So, James, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Dan, thank you for having me. Yes, sir. It's at World Series time here, and it starts tomorrow night, doesn't it?
Yeah, yes, it does. Yes, it does. And, us being in the Pennsylvania now, we are, even though I'm a Red Sox fan, we are surrounded by rabid Phillies fans. So it should be
I hear you.
could be an interesting series. So, before we get started in the conversation, though, James, just introduce yourself, in your own words to the audience. Who is James today?
Oh, I'm James Perdue, just good old guy that had some hard luck during life and got paralyzed, and we'll get to the story here in a minute. And one of the old things that was instilled in me as I was growing up is to fight, not give up, be determined, and come out and try to have the best life possible is what I try to do.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And again, that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because I think your story is an incredibly inspiring story. And I just think it's something listeners can learn a lot from. So, obviously you and I are both, sports guys, sports background. And I think that's another reason why we connected.
Oh
You
yeah.
can see the basketball and the football on your shelf there, and the baseball and all that stuff. And you were a pretty good athlete. And 19 years old, you're in your freshman year of college, on a scholarship to play baseball, left-handed pitcher, and you're in school for about 2 weeks, and you're playing a pickup football game. This is a game without pads. And I don't know if kids even play pickup football anymore. I know, when I was a kid, we did that all the
Yeah,
time.
I don't.
And
Yeah, I don't see many out there now. They're playing the pickup game on the controller and sitting at home.
yeah, and I'll tell you what, even though none of us were wearing pads or helmets, I mean, that didn't slow us down. I mean, we were hitting each other hard.
Oh yes,
And
yeah.
we did a lot. So, reading about your story and just kind of getting that background, it was something I could relate to. And so there you are, September of 1983, playing pickup football with the guys, and you're about ready to go home, and you're like, hey, you know what? I'll stick around for one more play. And man, did that play change the trajectory of your life? So, you know, I'll let you give the details of the story, but to give that background and understand, there you were, 19 years old, had your whole life ahead of you, really had aspirations to hopefully go on and play professional baseball, and all of a sudden, this one more play in this pickup football game, you're paralyzed for life. What was that like for you? And again, this is why you are truly the professor of perseverance, because man, that's a tough blow to for anybody at any age to sustain, physically, literally, and mentally. So what was that like for you to just process that when the doctor said you're not ever going to walk again? So just tell me the story about what took place.
Well, the sad thing about it is, again, I grew up, to be a fighter, be determined to do, and I had that invincibility as an athlete, invincibility that nothing was going to stop me. So even when the doctor told me you'll never walk again and possibly not move from your neck down, that didn't click into me because I figured I'll I'll be walking. Now I started crying because I'll never play baseball again. That was me. Is I'll never play the sport that I loved at that time. And so yeah, but when he said that, I mean, I'm thinking in my head, okay, I know it's going to be a long trial. It's going to take a while. I never, of course, never thought it would take 39 years of my life right now. I thought year that I'd be up walking, maybe with a limp, maybe struggling, But yeah, I never really let it sink in that I would never walk again. And so, yeah, it's just an invincibility from being an athlete that was taking charge of me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess there was a time where the doctor even said to your family, you guys don't have the resources to care for him at home. Put him in a nursing home. He's going to be too much trouble. Um, and your family wasn't having it. They were like, no, man, that's not the
Yeah,
route.
now
That's
again, yeah, my father died when I was 16, so I had to grow up fast, be the man of the family as well. And so when all this took place, my mom and then my two brothers, of course, grandmother was still around and everything. And fortunately, they were hard headed and stubborn like me, that they didn't accept when the doctor said, put him in a nursing home. He's too much of a burden for y'all to care for. And so fortunately, they didn't listen. We didn't listen. And we didn't end up in a nursing home. And so, because at that time when I had my injury, got hit, I'm laying on the field, and you won't believe this guy named JT pops in my head, because when I got hit, I tried to get up. I lift my head. That's the only thing that came to time. My arms didn't come, definitely feet and legs didn't come up. And I tried a second time to get up and didn't happen. And I started thinking of JT. Now, JT, I met him when I was 12, 14 years old. I used to visit my grandfather in a nursing home. And one day I went to go visit him, and a new patient had moved in a room before I got to my grandfather. And so as I'm passing his room, I heard someone say, "Hey, buddy, come here for a minute." So I go into his room, and it's JT. End up meeting him and everything. And he says, "Hey, can you hold his water?" And had a straw in it, cup with a straw in it. So I get a drink, and I held it for him. And then come to find out, he was like in his mid-30s and was paralyzed totally from his neck down from a car accident. And so I'm laying on the ground. I know I'm paralyzed and nothing's moving. And the first thing that's popping in my head is I'm gonna be 19 years old, like JT in a nursing home. It was the first thought to come in after realizing what was going on.
right. Right. And then as you said, the doctor had told you that, you may not have movement from your neck down. Now, obviously, anybody who's watching the video part of this podcast can see that you are moving your
We
hands
have
and
hands. Yes. All
upper
right.
upper body movement. So, you know, again, just hearing that news, and again, being young, thinking we're invincible because, again, I mean, I played in those backyard football games. Like I know exactly what was what was
Mm-hmm.
going on that day.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
because again, we weren't wearing pads, but
It's
that didn't
amazing we
matter.
don't have these. It's amazing we don't have these severe concussions like these athletes today, because at least they have helmets to protect. We didn't have anything, so it's a miracle we don't have all these concussions.
Yeah, it really is. But you know, when when you got that news, um, there had to have been a time where, like, really, you know, even though you're a fighter, there had to have been a period of time where it was like, you know, why did this happen to me? Why am I going through this? How did you get, through that first mode of emotions to, truly becoming, what you are today as a, professor of perseverance?
I remember the first two times that I truly cried from the injury. Not I mean, I cried for not being able to play baseball, but I truly cried. One time, I'm sitting there thinking of everything I've lost. Because I wanted to be a professional athlete. To not to say we grew up poor, but we were knocking on the door of the poor, and so we lived in a house. And when it rained, sometimes the roof leaked. Me again, my father died at 16, so I had to go to the roof, try to find it, patch it the best we can, because my mom couldn't afford a roofer.
Right.
Sometimes in Tennessee, it gets cold here in January and February, and our pipes froze. And so I had to go under the house at 16, finding the pipe where it's frozen. If it's burst, then I need to fix it so we have water, because she could afford a plumber. Same thing with auto mechanics and everything. Couldn't afford it, so I learned to do all that. So my goal then at that point was be a professional athlete, buy my mom this house she always wanted, buy cars and stuff to help my brothers, get something. And I'm thinking, what do you get your grandmother? They have everything already, for living as long as they have. But get her something nice. And then I was even going for my mom. I was even you used to hear getting what's called a mail order bride, and so I was going to give my mom a mail order groom, just to help her since my dad died. So that was my intent. So that one day I'm thinking about everything I've lost. I'm not going to be able to help my family, and I'm crying. And at that time, I can't move my neck down. And this nurse came in, Vicky. Oh boy, I'm still in love with Vicky. Vicky, if you ever hear this, catch up with me, baby. And so Vicky, she came in one day, and that day, and she got a Kleenex and cleaned my face up and everything. And I wasn't a Christian at that time, but she did say, uh, "Stay strong. God's got a plan for you. He's not going to let your life just go for nothing because of this." And I mean, she was very encouraging, beautiful, but she was incredible at that time for me when I needed it. And so that was the first time I was crying, and she again wiped her tears. And then I told myself then that it's okay for a man to cry, but only if he can wipe his own tears away. So I tried not to cry after that. But another time, uh, and I forgot when. The second time was in the hospital and everything. And the first time they put the label quadriplegic. I mean, I knew at that time I was barely moving my arms. There was no strength in them. Couldn't hold anything to eat. Couldn't brush my hair, brush my teeth. Couldn't with no strength, and my legs weren't moving either. And I mean, I knew. But then to hear the first time I'm labeled a quadriplegic, and I'm going, what are you talking about? And then he said, it's limited to no movement in your four limbs. And then that hit me. I finally had a label from
Right.
there. So,
Right.
but then other than that, the invincibility was still kicking in because first 5 years of my injury, I went to 18 different rehabs trying to find that cure. I
Wow.
mean, I went as far as up to Pennsylvania, down to Atlanta, Georgia, several places in Tennessee, Knoxville, where is it, Birmingham. But I went to like 18 different rehabs trying to find that cure to walk again. And every time I go in with high hopes, every time I come back more depressed because there was nothing they said they could do to help. And so I hid depression for like 5 years. And I didn't realize how depressed I was until I finally woke up and it was time to get life going. And that was the time that I went on my last rehab and thought this not going to get any better. And I decided then that, and I lied to myself and lied to my family. Now at the time it wasn't a lie, but 39 years later, it's a lie. Okay. But I finally said to them, I'm not giving up trying to walk, but it's time that if I want to have a life, I need to go back because I didn't know anybody paralyzed in wheelchairs where I grew up. And so I said, if I'm going to have any type of life, I need to go back to college, get a degree so I can get a good job. Okay. I didn't know all the stuff you can do without a degree in wheelchairs. And um, so I told him, the famous says, that's not that I'm giving up on the walking. We're putting it on the back burner to do the college thing. Well, again, eventually ended up being a lie because not one time since I said that have I gone to rehab to try to walk. Now, I've been to rehab to try to strengthen my arms again, to help transferring, to help getting dressed again, things like that. But not one time I've gone anywhere to um, try to walk. So eventually it was a lie, but it was a good lie that at least I needed to tell myself.
Right.
And I think it also helped the family take a little stress off them, you know, to finally get some acceptance going on.
Right. Right. Then how long after the accident did you start getting mobility in your upper body and your hands?
Actually, I went in for surgery to finally fuse my neck together about 2 weeks after the surgery and to fuse it. And it wasn't long after that I started moving my hands and arms. Fingers still don't have much strength in them. I have very little tricep use, but I'm able to push myself around and able to drive and get dressed, and definitely can go cook and make a banana split when I need it. So, but Halloween night, which we're going to be celebrating here in the next few days, um, I actually first moved a muscle in my leg when I was in the hospital. And at first, they was telling me, "Oh, it's not you. You're having muscle spasms." And I'm going, "No, no, no." And it was a hamstring that I could feel that I was moving onto my right leg. And I said, "Put your hand underneath there and feel." I said, "I'm going to contract it." And then they put their hand down, they felt me contract. Said, "I'm going to release it." And I release it. I'm contracting. I'm contracting. I'm contracting. I'm releasing. And then they're going, "Well, you are getting some movement back." And so that was the first time that I started moving my legs. Was I got hurt September 11th, 6 weeks later, roughly. Yeah, from Halloween day was the first time started moving. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then your your perseverance continued because you went back to school, you got your degree, but then you didn't get hired right out of the gate. You know, we were in a different time in our history than what we are now. I think now, you know, people with disabilities are much more accepted than what they were, you know, back in the 80s. I mean, the ADA's come a long way. But, you know, there were many people who, you know, would interview you, but were reluctant or just flat out didn't want to hire you simply because you were in a wheelchair. What was that process like? Of, you know, like, hey, I've got this piece of paper that says I'm qualified. I've done everything that all these other people that you're hiring have done, and but yet because of this chair that I'm in, you're not going to give me an opportunity. What was it like dealing with that?
Yeah, here in Tennessee, we have 95 counties. And by the time it was over with in 3 years, I had applied at 50 out of the 95 counties and been on probably 40 interviews going. And I mean, I was putting 3,000 miles a month on my car a month because back then you either waited for them to mail it to you, an application, and then you fill it out and mail it back, or I would go drive to the places, get the application, fill them out right in there, and give it right back to them to start the process. Okay, instead of waiting 4 weeks to do everything back and forth. And so, yeah, I was putting 3,000 miles a month on my car with all this. And so, but yeah, one interview really ticked me off. I was an hour and a half away from the interview, and I had called them because I'd been on multiple places and to, and wasted my time on these hour and a half, 2 hour drives. And so this time I said, well, I'm gonna call them, see, make sure they still have openings. And I researched their stuff, and I go called them, and they said, "Oh yeah, we have plenty open." I said, "In science, that's what I was teaching, science, PE or health classes. Yeah, we got plenty." I said, "All right, thank you." That was on Monday. Wednesday was an interview. Drove up there, spend 20 minutes. The guy interviewing me, and he says, "Well, we'll have to keep your name on file. But we don't have any openings right now." I go, "What?" I said, "I just called 2 days ago, and they said there's plenty of openings." And then he tells me, he said, "Oh, well, they were all filled between now and then and now." I said, "Really?" And so why couldn't someone have called and canceled the interview instead of me driving an hour and a half? You know, and so I knew I wasn't getting that job. So, but yeah, I kind of caught them in their little scheme on
Yeah.
that one. So, but yeah, it got frustrating, just like everything else. But it was something I wanted to do, and I finally got in where I live in the county as an interim. One teacher was going on maternity leave, and I got to teach half a year for her. And then the following summer, ended up getting a job where I was there for 12, 14 years. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. And again, I can't even imagine the frustration that was involved.
Well,
Um,
today, with all the disabled vets coming back and the military, it's made things easier because there's more organizations that are bringing awareness out there where hate to say, back in the 70s, people shunned the Vietnam people. And even though they went to war because of us, sending them, and they were just doing their job. But nowadays, yeah, everybody's just so more open. There's a lot more organizations to help them with their disabilities. And so it's made it awareness for all of us now.
Yeah, and that's so important, just to, to have that awareness. And again, like I said, we've come a long way from when you were going through that in the, in the 80s and early 90s at that point. So it is great to see that we've moved forward and we've moved the needle forward as far as that goes. But once you did finally get that opportunity, and you said you ended up being there, 12, 14 years, what was that feeling like for you at that point, where it was like, man, somebody has finally given me a shot. Somebody finally believes in me and understands that I am bigger than this disability that I have, that disability does not define me as a human being. There's more to me than that.
Yeah, I remember when the principal called because she was making a decision that day, and because it was only like 2 or 3 days before school was starting, so it was late hires. But apparently, she had got approved to hire 2 or 3 more teachers because they were expecting more kids coming in. And so I remember going into this interview with her, and when I came out of the interview, this other man stands up in his military with his briefcase, his shirt, tie, and jacket. And I'm walking out and I said, I ain't getting this job after that guy like that. And kind of finally, he was military. And I got the phone call. She hired me, but I was about ready to start crying, and thanked her, said, you're not going to regret the decision and everything. So I had to go to an in service for new teachers. And so I go there and I'm with a friend of mine. He just got hired and we were coaching together, but he got hired at a different school, but we were there to new teachers. Well, this gentleman that stood up that morning when I was leaving in his military and briefcase and everything comes over and puts his hands out, and both of us got hired at the same school. He got hired to teach 6th grade science. I got hired for 7th grade science. And so him and I became real good buddies, friends, and eventually was coaching our girls basketball team. And again, back there, you see it right there. You see, we won the state championship one year. And so Rick and I became real good buddies and friends. But like everything in life, everything moves on, and him and I have gotten distance. But he was another one that I thank God for people that he's put in my life to help me be more successful. I mean, I'm really thankful for them, the family that he put me with. He knew before I was born all was going to happen. I needed this family to help me. All right. He knew that Rick Sampson needed to be in my life as a teacher and a coach. And again, we worked together and stuff like that. So I'm thankful. Even I tell people, even I'm thankful to God that crossing path that an evil person, I call them evil. Okay, someone's deceptive. Someone's going to steal from me. Someone's going to lie to me. That they come into my life, because then it makes me more aware and glad of the people that are in my life. And so,
Yeah, it truly does. I mean, I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. And, those quote unquote bad moments of our lives, um, are really, in my opinion, only bad if we don't learn something from them,
mhm.
and continue to move forward. So, obviously you're a man of faith. You said that wasn't the case when you first had the injury. So at what point, did you allow God to come into your life? And then how important was that to, you know, your faith to continue, this journey of perseverance that you've had the last 39 years?
I grew up, mom and dad would make me and my brother go to church and go to Sunday school, but I didn't want to go. They just made me go. And I'd learned a few scripture because we had to learn them. Okay. But we used to go every Sunday to go visit my grandfather again in the nurse home and visit other elderly people while we're in there. And so one day, one of the ministers made a mistake and he says, You will learn more in this with these people here than you would any time in church. Boy, that was my out. There you go, Mom. He said I didn't have to go. He said I'm going to learn more about life and everything here. And so that was pretty much the last time I went. So even when I had my injury, it was like I knew there was a God, but it was hard to believe in one. Why would he allow something like this to happen?
Right.
Okay. Why does God allow women to get raped, men to get raped, people to get murdered? So it was one of the things like I knew it was a God, it was just hard to believe in him. And so as growing up and going to college, I started asking more questions as well. Because, I heard about these Christians and stuff. So I want to, find out more about it as I got older. And one guy, when I was at one college, he, well, he asked me after class, he said, "Where are you going to be in the next 5 minutes?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to sit right here in the sun and bake and work my tan line and get ready for my next class." And he says, "Well, I'm going to go to my Bible. I'm going to save you." I said, "Huh?" He said, "Yeah, I'm going to get my Bible and save you." I said, "You are?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "I thought Jesus was supposed to save." He said, "Oh, I'm going to do it." I said, "You're going to do it?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "All right, buddy." So when he left to go to his car to get his Bible, I took off and got away because I wasn't about to sit there for that. Because again, I knew enough about the Bible to probably get me in trouble, but I knew that he wasn't saving me. It's going to be Jesus through him. But that's not what he said. So one day he comes to class the following week. This time he didn't give me a chance to leave. He had his Bible already thumping with it and everything. And I said, "Well, tell me this, man." He said, "I just played an innocent game of football. Why would God let me get paralyzed?" I said, "There's these drug dealers living in these $1 million houses. He's letting them live that gracefully. But then this to me." And then his answer was, "Well, God wants to show he has control over you." I said, "What? Control?" And I said, "Well, I don't want to know a controlling God. I want to know a loving God." I said, "Why, he could have broke my pinky and said, 'Now next time you're going to,'" I said, "But I said, I don't want to know your God if he's going to be controlling and damning me. I want one that's going to love me when I goof up and do stupid stuff." Okay. Now I go to a different college and my roommate, he falls in love with this girl worked went to school and she worked at the bookstore. Jim was his name. Her name was Cindy. And if you ever want to find Jim after class, always go to the bookstore because he's over there in love with Cindy. Okay. So one day I go over there. Cindy was explaining to him why he's in a wheelchair. I said, "Hold on, wait, but I want to hear this too." I said, "Because I want to know why I'm in a wheelchair." And she all of a sudden she says, "You're in a wheelchair because of your sins." What? I said, "Jim," I said, "I don't know a lot about the Bible. I know she's probably know a lot more than I do." I said, "But it makes no sense, Jim." I said, "If we're all in wheelchair, if we're in wheelchairs because of our sins, why ain't she in a wheelchair? Why ain't that person over there in a wheelchair? Why ain't everybody in a wheelchair for their sins?" Because the Bible says we've all sinned. And so then all of a sudden he goes, "Wait a minute. I was born this way. I didn't have time to sin." Her answer then was, "You're paying the price of your mom and dad's sin." I said, "Jim, I don't know. You can keep liking her all you want to, but I'm telling you, this woman's a witch." And I said, and I left. I left. And so I didn't want to hear that again. I mean, but it made no sense. I said, if you'd have told, if all of us in the wheelchair, you said that, I could believe it. I said, but no, what you're saying is not, can't be true. And it goes back and you read it when it tells you we're not responsible for mom and dad's sins to be put on us. And just like whatever we do, they're not, to be put on them and things for Jim. So then I finally got into my teaching, like we mentioned, in the year 2000, the spring of 2000. One of my students then said, "Hey, coach, at our youth minister, we were talking about why does bad things happen to good people?" I said, "Oh, I wish you'd have told me. I would have loved to hear that." And she says, "Oh, well, we just introduced it this week. We're going to talk about it next week." I said, "All right." I said, "Well, I'm going to come if you don't mind." I said, "I would like to learn why." And so I went and listened to the message. And at the end, the youth minister said, "Anybody want to talk to me afterwards? I'll stick around for a while." Sure enough, I said, "All right, Paul, you know, I understand everything you said up there, like what you said. I said, answer this question. Why did this happen to me? He gave the best answer that anybody give. I mean, he says, I don't know. That's between God when he's ready to let you know. He said, and not hearing a controlling God, not hearing because of my sins. He says, I don't know. That's the best answer you can give. Okay. And I didn't get saved that night, even though he was talking. Satan was working just as hard that night not to get saved. But June 4th, 2000, Billy Graham came to the Titan Stadium, and I ended up going on the last night up there and got saved that night there. And then who was at the stadium, and I didn't know it when I was going forward to get saved and get information from the crowd, come all the way from the top down, was my friend Rick Sampson. Came down there to help me with everything. He was already there. I didn't know he was going. He surely didn't know I was going. I mean, he was a Christian when we met. Again, I wasn't. And so he had no idea I was showing up, but he was there. And then here he'd come down, and all of a sudden I felt a tap on the shoulder where I'm up there at the stage, and turn around. Rick, what are you doing here? So, yeah.
I love that. I love that. Tell me a little bit about, your coaching and, how that was able to kind of, feed that hunger for, sports and still being involved, where you overcame the fact that, yeah, I'm in a wheelchair. I can't go out and play myself anymore, but I can definitely have an influence on these young people's lives. And, regardless of my physical state, and make an impact on their life. So, what was that like for you? And why did you want to get involved in coaching, in the first place? And then what was that whole experience like? I mean, obviously you're very successful. You got the state championship, ball there that you pointed out earlier. Um, what was that process like for you getting into coaching, and, what did it do for your psyche while you were there?
Before going back to college, my brother and I were coaching a Babe Ruth team. My younger brother was coming through, and we used to go watch him play in the Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth is 13 to 15-year-olds. And after he got out, then we hopped in and coached. And for me at the beginning, and I was, when I got hurt, I still wanted to have something to do with the game of baseball. And so to me, it ended up being at the beginning was a form of therapy for me, that I could be on the field and still be acknowledged to give to them to teach them, even though physically I couldn't. So my brother, and just like Rick Sampson, they were the extension of me. Physically, they showed everything what to do. And then we talked about, and both of us, all of us, explained what they should be doing. And so, yeah, for me, at the beginning, it was just a form of therapy to just get me through some hard times on there. And then as I was going to school, my goal was to teach and coach, not just one. And so
Right.
when I went into my student teaching to learn how to teach, while I was there, one of my former ball players was there, and we're 2 hours away from where I grew up, where I'm grew up in Gallatin and coaching. We're in Woodbury, where I'm doing my student teaching. And this one student, he's there, and he played on my team when we won a championship. And so his dad was all excited that I was there student teaching, and talked to the coach to get them to help, because they were going to have a good team there to help with them. And so at first the coach, they said he coached softball all the time, and for some reason he wanted to do baseball. And so I talked to him, and he had me allowed me to come be part of the team. And so I ended up having a pretty good year with them as well. So when I finally got that teaching job again and got into, I was at the 7th grade science. I called the high school next door to us and talked to the baseball coach and told him I'd like to be part of the program, and explained. And then he ended up doing some research on the internet and found out what kind of player I was when I was playing. And yeah, he came over and we talked. I helped out the high school while doing the high school baseball, while doing the 7th grade, 8th grade girls basketball. And so, but then I just eventually just quit the baseball. It's not that I didn't love it anymore or anything. It's just, it's so daggum hard in a wheelchair getting from your car to the field. I mean, if they don't have a sidewalk and it's all gravel or all grass, and then someone's having to push you everywhere, and then getting on the field, and at least I found out with the basketball, it may be difficult to get into the building sometimes with the way parking is and stuff. But once you're in the building, it's all level.
Right.
And then we can. So eventually, I ended up just sticking to the basketball just to make it easier on my body and anybody else with me, so they don't have to struggle get me through, pushing
Right.
me through the thing.
Right.
But again, at the beginning, it was just all at the beginning for just therapy for me and
Yeah.
there. So and again and again the invincibility, I guess, kicking in, knowing I still have something to offer. I don't have to be able to show them a lot spread knowledge to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And that, again, from a guy who'd coached for 30 years, you know, the feeling you get to be able to help those kids. I was always one who, was very big on teaching life lessons through the game as well. And I think I mentioned this when I was on your show. I mean, one of the biggest blessings for, Sandy and I has been the fact that we've been able to reconnect with a lot of my old players who are, scattered throughout the country at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yes.
and, to see those seeds that you had planted so many years ago now, coming into bloom and flourishing in their own lives is pretty rewarding. So I can definitely relate to, just the whole feeling of coaching and wanting to, to give back like that and be a part of their lives for sure. And, there's
Well,
just not.
even like I do. Well, I was gonna say, like I do, even after you're done coaching and when you re-meet up with them again, there's you're still teaching life lessons. They're
Yeah.
still looking up to you for something. Okay. I've got this one kid that I coached him for 3 years in Babe Ruth baseball. And just before I got into teaching, and he graduated, he actually played on our state football team that won the state his senior year and got him an old ring, from playing football there. And so he ended up years later, got in some serious trouble selling drugs and stuff. And he got 18 years in jail, prison, not jail, prison. And so I was writing letters to him to help him get through today, sending some of my books to him, offering other books. And fortunately, they asked me, his mom had asked me, could I help write a letter to the parole board to get him, see if he get early release. And so I wrote a letter, just like several other people did. And fortunately, he got out in about 3 years with his thing. So, but again, even when I see someone and whether they've been in jail or not, because I've met other students I've had that had gone to jail, but theirs wasn't no 18 prison year. And so, but I'll see them and they'll come up and hug me and thank me for teaching them and not giving up on them. Because I started realizing I wanted the kids that the other teachers didn't want. They're acting up in class. I'm tired of it. They won't listen. I'm tired of it. And I finally go, give me these kids. And I would tell them all up front, I'm not taking your crap and everything like that. And then, but what I would do is the ones that were really severe, I would take my desk and clean off half my desk. Here's your desk. Me and you are sharing this desk. And I don't expect you to interrupt me while I'm teaching at my desk. And we're sharing this desk. Now, what I would do then is I can talk to them and find out why you're having these problems, what's going on at home, what's going on elsewhere, and just talk with them, not yell at them. And here's the reason that I did this. My first year of teaching, I was doing the old yelling across the room. Why are you doing that? I can't believe you're doing it. Good gracious. And then, I'm having a stroke and high blood pressure because of them. And at the end of the year, I started thinking, And then this when I changed my attitude, everything. Before they got in my room, they've already probably been yelled at mom and dad because they overslept. Probably didn't get to eat their breakfast because mom and dad's in a hurry to go because they overslept. So they're being yelled at already. They're on the bus and they're goofed up, done something. The bus drivers done yelled at them. And then they get into school, waiting the class get started. And the one that's doing the gym was probably already yelled at them too. And I'm going, by the time they get to me, they're immune to the yelling.
Right.
And I'm just, and I started doing things different. So that's when I had them share my desk and get to know them. And then I go like this. Now, I can't write on the board, but I need you to write this message on the board. Now, when you go back there, don't disappoint me with your buddies over there. You get over and do what you're supposed to and get back over here. And they would, most of them would. Not all of them, but they most of them would. And so then to extend their trust, hey, go to the office and ask them if they can make 10 copies of this for me. And then they do it. And I said, now don't go out there and get in trouble in the hallway because you're going to make me look bad for letting you go. And then sure enough, every now and again, I get a teacher. I saw so-and-so was out in the hallway and had your pass. I said, yeah, he was doing something for me. I said, you let him out? Yeah, like that. And but again, even today, I'll see some of them kids and they thank me for not giving up on them and give me a hug and everything like that. So it's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes they're just looking for somebody who can believe in them, you know, and
Yeah. Because again, they've already heard everything as soon as they're out of bed already because they overslept, and it's already starting off hearing the yelling. And I started thinking, why am I blowing myself up? Let's do this a lot different. So
yeah,
after that, that's how I started. After my first year, that's how I started doing that.
yeah. Love that. Love that. So one of the things we haven't talked about yet that I want to talk about before we wrap up are your books. You've written several. What was the inspiration behind wanting to write the books and get your story out there to the masses?
All right. The first book, it took me 12 years to write it. And not that it's that
Same here.
huge. Yeah, it's not that it's huge book. It's only like 150 pages, but I'm not a writer. I'm not an author per se. I guess I'm an author legally, I guess, but I'm not a writer. Okay. I failed my freshman English. And so my senior year, I had to take half a year of freshman English to catch up so I can graduate. And so, but I wrote it because I want people to be inspired that I did do something after getting hurt. Okay. Now, that book, again, I tell people it's a miracle that as much as we upgrade our computers, that I didn't lose that manuscript on that hard drive. Because if I'd have lost it, I'd have never gone back and done it again. I know I wouldn't have. And so it's a miracle on that. But what had happened per se and got to where I'm at today is life came back again. Here I am winning a state championship. Life's going great. I'm working on my doctoral degree at this time. Life's going good. And then all of a sudden, life's come around, kicked me in the teeth. I attempted suicide 3 times in 3 days. That's how bad I wanted out. And the
Wow.
last time they found me in my van in the garage with the doors shut, sucking carbon monoxide, passed out on the floor. And they got me to the hospital, put me in a hyperbaric chamber to force the carbon monoxide out of my body, oxygen into my body. I was in the hospital for 7 weeks from this and doing therapy again. And then I tell people, I say, just to lighten the mood a little bit, I go, and when you live through a suicide attempt, they make you see a psychiatrist. They make you see it. And so I had to see a psychologist who I saw. And he's the one that told me that God didn't take you for whatever reason, and you still have something you need to do. And you got a good story to get out and tell, and you need to write a book. You need to get into public speaking. And that's how I finished that one book, finally finished it. It's called One More Play. Just the name being that one more play where it put me out today. And so they got me into the motivational, inspirational speaking, and then starting a YouTube channel years later. And then here, just 2.5 years later, starting a podcast.
Yeah. I love it. Love it. James, we're just about out of time. Is there anything, I mean, we've talked about such an array of topics, but is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to make the listeners aware of?
No, I think we put a little dent in a little bit of everything. So just everybody, what the South would say, hang in there like a hair in a biscuit.
I've never heard that one, but that I will definitely use that again.
There
So,
you go.
James, how do people find you if they want to reach out, if they want to, have you come out and speak, if they want to get a copy of the book? How can they find the Professor of Perseverance on the internet?
And you just said it, the Professor of Perseverance. Do the old Google search, Professor of Perseverance, or if you want to put James Perdue. Again, I spell my name Perdue the right way. Purdue University misspells Purdue. And so mine is Perdue. But again, Professor of Perseverance, and you go to Amazon and you'll find the books on there. I guess that's about it. And then on your major platforms, again, like you, that they find the podcast, which is Professor of Perseverance podcast, and that's it. Then
Love it, love it. So that brings me to my final question. As you know, the subtitle of the podcast is "Many Little People in Many Little Places," which comes from the opening lyrics of a Michael Franti song, "Gloria," which go, "When many little people in many little places do many little things, and the whole world changes." So it's one of the little things that James does on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place.
I want everybody to sing the ABC. Now, not ABC all the way to Z, just sing ABC. Okay. Remember Michael Jackson. That's all he did. ABC. ABC. That's all he did. ABC. He didn't go any further. And then when you think of ABC, think of A, the sooner you can accept your adversity, the sooner you can heal and move forward in life. B, begin your battle now. And that is find someone that's going through what you've going through and get some advice from them. Hey, everything's at our fingertips with the internet. Find an organization, someone on Facebook, a group on Facebook, clubs, associations. Find a mentor, a life coach, something that can help you. So begin your battle, and then C, it's time to conquer the challenge. Take all the information and go in full steam ahead. Be invincible at this point. Determination, persevere, and dominate it. Hey, we're not going to have the best, we're not going to have the perfect best life ever. I don't care who you are, but that doesn't mean you can't have the best life you deserve from where you're at and still going forward.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can't control the things that happen to you, but you can control how you react to those things. And I think that's such an important message for sure. So, James, man, I really loved the conversation. I love that you took the time to be on my show. Appreciate you having me on your show back a while ago. And for those out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts, my blogs at journeymymotherson.com or danclouser.com. While you're there, pick up a copy of my most recent book, The Journey of My Mother's Son, Volume 1. And again, James, really appreciate the conversation. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it, buddy.
You bet.